the invitation came to my office. Not to our house. To my desk, where colleagues could see the cream envelope with gold script. Where my assistant handed it to me with a curious smile, assuming it was for a friend's celebration. I opened it during lunch, alone in my car, and read the names twice before my brain would accept what my eyes were showing me. Jennifer Marie Caldwell and Derek Anthony Stone request the honor of your presence. The date was circled in gold foil. 3 weeks away. We'd filed for divorce 4 months ago. It wasn't final. Not even close. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The thing about betrayal is that it arrives in layers. The first cut is the affair itself. The second is realizing it never stopped. The third is understanding that while you were trying to salvage something, she was already building the next chapter without you. But this was a fourth layer I didn't know existed. A wedding invitation with my wife's name on it, sent to my workplace like a casual announcement, as if the legality of our marriage was just a minor detail she'd forgotten to finalize. I'm Marcus. 42 years old, systems analyst for a tech firm in Austin, Texas. The kind of guy who keeps his lawn neat, pays bills on time, and believed that marriage meant something more than a placeholder between better options. Jennifer and I had been married for 11 years. No kids, thankfully, though we'd tried for the first 5. When that didn't happen, we said we'd be enough for each other. Turns out I was the only one who meant it. The unraveling started 6 months before that invitation landed on my desk. It started the way these things always do, with small inconsistencies that your brain files away but your gut keeps pulling back out for review. Jennifer worked in pharmaceutical sales, a job that required travel and late meetings. I never questioned it. Why would I? Trust isn't something you ration in a marriage. You either give it or you don't. I gave it completely. But then the travel patterns changed. Instead of Tuesday through Thursday trips to Dallas or Houston, she started leaving on Friday mornings and returning Sunday nights. Weekend conferences, she said. Industry mixers. Networking events that couldn't be missed. She'd come home exhausted, smelling like hotel soap and airplane recycled air, and I'd pour her wine and rub her feet while she scrolled through her phone with a small, distant smile. The smile should have been my first clue. It wasn't directed at me. It was aimed at something inside the screen, something that made her eyes soften in a way they hadn't around me in years. When I'd ask about her weekend, she'd give me bullet points. Panel discussions, vendor booths, dinner with colleagues whose names I'd never heard before. The details were always just specific enough to sound real but vague enough to avoid follow-up questions. I told myself I was being paranoid. Marriage requires effort, I reasoned. She was working hard, climbing the ladder, making connections. I should be supportive, not suspicious. So I smiled back and refilled her glass and pretended not to notice when she angled her phone away from me or when she started charging it in the bathroom overnight instead of on her nightstand. The cracks widened in March. We'd planned a weekend in Fredericksburg, a small getaway to reconnect. I'd booked a bed and breakfast, made reservations at the German restaurant she loved, even arranged for a private wine tasting at a vineyard she'd mentioned wanting to visit. 2 days before we were supposed to leave, she came home with an apologetic expression that I now recognize as rehearsed. Emergency work trip. A major client in Phoenix needed immediate attention. She'd be gone Thursday through Monday. She was so sorry. She'd make it up to me. We'd reschedule. Her eyes never quite met mine as she delivered the explanation, and her hands moved too quickly as she packed, like she was afraid I might ask questions she didn't want to answer. I canceled everything and spent that weekend refinishing the deck, alone, with a cooler of beer and a playlist that reminded me of when we first dated. I told myself this was temporary. All marriages go through seasons. We'd find our way back. The wood I sanded smooth was easier to fix than whatever was happening between us, but I convinced myself both were just a matter of patience and elbow grease. When she came home that Monday night, something was different. Not wrong, exactly. Different. She seemed lighter, almost giddy. Her skin had a glow that a business trip shouldn't produce. She kissed me on the cheek, a quick peck that felt like a gesture from a distant relative, and then disappeared into the bedroom to unpack. I found a receipt in her suitcase pocket later that week while doing laundry. Not from Phoenix. From Sedona. A romantic resort with couples packages and sunset views. The date matched her supposed business trip perfectly. That receipt sat on my workbench in the garage for 3 days while I decided what to do with it. I could confront her. I could pretend I never saw it. I could hire someone to confirm what I already knew. In the end, I did what men like me do when we're afraid of the answer. I put the receipt back where I found it and waited to see if she'd slip up again. She did. She slipped up constantly. I was just too afraid to catch her. By April, the pretense had worn so thin I could see through it. She stopped wearing her wedding ring to work, claiming it snagged on her laptop bag. She started going to a new gym across town, one that required a 40-minute drive when we had a perfectly good fitness center 3 blocks from our house. Her phone was never face up anymore. Texts came in at odd hours, and she'd glance at them with a quick smile before deleting the notifications. The final straw came on a Thursday night in late April. I came home early from work with takeout from her favorite Thai place, planning to surprise her with dinner and maybe a conversation about us, about whether we were okay, about whether she still wanted this marriage. The house was empty, but her car was in the driveway. I found her in our bedroom, door closed, voice low and warm in a way it hadn't been with me in months. I stood in the hallway and listened. Not because I wanted to invade her privacy, but because my feet wouldn't move. She was laughing, the kind of genuine, unguarded laugh that used to be mine. She said his name. Derek. She said it like it tasted sweet. She told him she missed him, that the week felt long without him, that she couldn't wait for the weekend. Then she said something that dropped through my chest like a stone. I know, baby. Just a little longer and we won't have to hide anymore. I backed away from the door, set the takeout on the kitchen counter, and walked out of the house. I drove to a park near the lake and sat on a bench until the sun dropped behind the hills. Ducks paddled in formation across the water. Joggers passed with their dogs. The world kept turning like nothing had shattered. When I finally went home, she was in the living room watching a cooking show, acting like everything was normal. I asked how her day was. She said fine. I asked if she wanted dinner. She said she'd already eaten. We sat 3 feet apart on the same couch and existed in completely different realities. The next morning, I called a lawyer. His name was Robert Chen, a calm, methodical man in his 50s who'd been recommended by a colleague who'd gone through his own divorce 2 years prior. Robert listened to my story without judgment, took notes in neat handwriting, and then asked the question I had been avoiding. Do you want to try to fix this, or do you want to protect yourself? I thought about the receipt from Sedona. The closed bedroom door. The way she said Derek's name. I want to protect myself, I said. The words felt like admitting defeat, but also like choosing to stop drowning. Robert nodded and pulled out a retainer agreement. We'll start with filing, he said. No-fault divorce. Texas is a community property state, so we'll need full financial disclosure from both parties. Do you have joint accounts? We did. We had everything joint. Bank accounts, credit cards, the mortgage on our house, a small investment portfolio we'd built together. I'd always thought joint meant partnership. Now it felt like exposure. Robert walked me through the process, the timelines, the likely outcomes. In Texas, he explained, the waiting period is 60 days minimum from filing to finalization. But contested issues can stretch it to 6 months or more. Since you don't have children, it should be relatively straightforward unless she fights the asset division. I filed the papers on a Monday in May. Jennifer was served at work 2 days later. She came home that evening with the envelope in her hand and fury in her eyes. Her face was flushed, her jaw tight. She threw the papers on the kitchen table and demanded to know what I thought I was doing. I looked at her, this woman I'd shared a bed with for over a decade, and felt nothing but tired. "I'm doing what you should have done months ago," I said quietly. "I'm being honest." Her anger shifted to something else. Panic, maybe. Or calculation. She sat down heavily in the chair across from me and tried a different approach. Her voice softened. "Marcus, we can work this out. I know things have been hard. I know I've been distant. But divorce? Can't we try counseling first?" The performance was almost convincing. Almost. But I'd heard her on the phone with Derek. I'd seen the Sedona receipt. I knew what her laugh sounded like when it was real, and this wasn't it. I shook my head. "I'm done trying, Jennifer. You've been gone for months. This is just making it official." She stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for weakness, for a crack she could widen. When she didn't find one, she stood up, grabbed her purse, and left. She didn't come home that night. Or the next. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "She stayed with her sister," she said via text. "She needed space to think. The house felt enormous without her. Every room echoed. I thought I'd feel relief, maybe even liberation. Instead, I felt hollow. I cooked meals for one. I watched television shows she hated. I slept in the middle of the bed and woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there. This, I realized, was grief. Not for her. For the version of us I'd believed in. Jennifer hired her own attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Vance who had a reputation for being aggressive in asset division. The paperwork started flying back and forth. Financial disclosures, property valuations, demands, and counterdemands. Jennifer wanted the house. I wanted my retirement accounts untouched. She claimed she'd sacrificed career advancement to support my job moves, which was categorically untrue. We'd moved once, for my job, and she'd gotten a better position because of it. Robert handled it all with calm efficiency, pushing back on her inflated claims, documenting everything. "Discovery is going to be interesting," he told me during one of our meetings. "If she's been spending marital funds on an affair, we can argue for a larger share of the assets for you. Texas allows fault to be considered in property division. Do you have proof of the affair?" I had the receipt from Sedona. I had the odd travel patterns. I had the feeling in my gut that had never been wrong. But I didn't have photos or explicit evidence. Not yet. I told Robert I'd work on it. He gave me the name of a private investigator, a woman named Lisa Torres who specialized in matrimonial cases. She was expensive but discreet. I met her at a coffee shop in Round Rock, away from anyone who might know us. Lisa was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened to my story, asked clarifying questions, and then laid out what she could do. Surveillance on weekends, background checks on Derek Stone, financial forensics if I wanted to trace spending patterns. "It's not cheap," she warned. "And sometimes what we find makes things messier before they get clearer. Are you sure you want to know?" I thought about the invitation that would arrive at my office months later. I thought about Jennifer's laugh through the bedroom door. "I'm sure," I said. Lisa nodded and pulled out a contract. "Give me 3 weeks," she said. "I'll have something for you." She did. 3 weeks later, Lisa sent me a file via encrypted email. Inside were photos that confirmed what I already knew but hurt in ways I hadn't anticipated. Jennifer and Derek at a lakeside restaurant in Marble Falls, holding hands across the table. Jennifer and Derek hiking at Enchanted Rock, his arm around her waist. Jennifer and Derek at a boutique hotel in San Antonio, checking in together on a Friday afternoon. The timestamps on the photos matched weekends she'd told me she was at conferences or visiting her sister. Every lie documented in high resolution. But the photo that gutted me wasn't romantic. It was mundane. Jennifer and Derek at a Home Depot, pushing a cart full of paint cans and curtain rods, laughing about something. They looked like a couple setting up a home together. Because that's exactly what they were doing. Lisa's report included an address. A townhouse in South Austin, leased under Derek's name starting in April. The month after we'd canceled our Fredericksburg trip. I sat in my car in the office parking lot and stared at that photo for 20 minutes. The paint cans were teal and cream. The curtain rods were brushed nickel. They were building a life together while I was still trying to save ours. I forwarded everything to Robert. "This changes things," he said when he called me that evening. "With this evidence, we can push for a more favorable division. She's been using marital funds to support an affair and set up a separate household. That's dissipation of assets. It's going to hurt her case." The divorce proceedings shifted after that. Patricia Vance's aggressive posturing softened considerably once Robert submitted the investigator's report. Jennifer's demands became more reasonable, almost conciliatory. She agreed to give up the house in exchange for a larger share of the investment accounts. She stopped fighting me on the car, the furniture, the small things that had seemed so important weeks earlier. I thought we were heading toward a clean resolution. I was wrong. The invitation arrived in early August, 4 months after I'd filed. Jennifer and I were still legally married. The divorce wouldn't be final until late September at the earliest. But there it was, in cream cardstock with gold foil lettering, announcing her upcoming wedding to Derek Stone. The ceremony was scheduled for the first Saturday in September. 3 weeks before our divorce would be finalized. I stared at that invitation in my car and felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not even surprise. Something colder and more clarifying. She wasn't just moving on. She was erasing me while I still legally existed. I photographed the invitation and sent it to Robert with a single line of text. "Is this legal?" His response came within minutes. "It's not illegal, but it's monumentally stupid. Bring it to my office. Now." I drove straight there, still in my work clothes, the invitation in my hand like evidence of a crime. Robert's office was in a sleek building downtown, all glass and steel. I took the elevator to the 12th floor and found him waiting in the conference room with a pot of coffee and a grim expression. He examined the invitation like it was a puzzle. "This is bold," he said finally. "Reckless, even. Texas doesn't prohibit getting engaged or planning a wedding before a divorce is final, but actually getting married while still legally bound to another person is bigamy. That's a felony. Does she understand that?" I shook my head. I have no idea what she understands anymore. Robert tapped the invitation against the table. "We need to make sure her attorney knows about this. If Jennifer goes through with this ceremony before your divorce is final, she's committing a crime. Patricia Vance is too smart to let her client walk into that." Robert drafted a letter that afternoon. It was polite but firm, outlining the legal implications of Jennifer's planned wedding and requesting confirmation that the ceremony would not take place until after our divorce was finalized. He sent it via certified mail to Patricia Vance's office and copied me on the correspondence. "Now we wait," he said. "Either Patricia will rein her in, or Jennifer will ignore the warning and create a much bigger problem for herself." 3 days later, Robert's phone rang. It was Patricia Vance, and she did not sound happy. I wasn't in the office, but Robert told me about the conversation later. Patricia had been blindsided by the invitation. Jennifer hadn't told her about the wedding plans. She hadn't mentioned Derek Stone's name once during their attorney-client meetings. Patricia had been operating under the assumption that this was a standard dissolution of marriage with no third parties involved. When Patricia confronted Jennifer about it, Jennifer apparently tried to downplay it. She claimed it was just a commitment ceremony, not a legal marriage. They weren't going to file for a marriage license until after the divorce was final. It was symbolic. But Patricia wasn't buying it. The invitation didn't say commitment ceremony. It said wedding. It listed a venue, a caterer, a reception. It had RSVP cards and a gift registry. This was a full wedding being planned while Jennifer was still legally married to me. Patricia made a decision that afternoon. She withdrew from Jennifer's case. In Texas, attorneys can withdraw from representation if the client engages in conduct the attorney finds repugnant or if continuing representation would violate ethical rules. Patricia filed a motion to withdraw, citing irreconcilable differences with her client regarding case strategy. The motion was granted within 48 hours. Jennifer was suddenly without legal representation, for weeks before her planned wedding and 6 weeks before our divorce was supposed to be final. Robert called me with the news on a Friday afternoon. I was at my desk, reviewing code for a system update, when my phone buzzed. Patricia dropped her, he said without preamble. Filed the motion yesterday, granted this morning. Jennifer is scrambling to find new counsel, but no one wants to touch this. Word spreads fast in the family law community. She's radioactive right now. I leaned back in my chair and processed that. What happens now? Robert's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Now she has 2 choices. She can postpone the wedding until after the divorce is final, which makes her look foolish to everyone she's invited. Or she can proceed with the wedding and risk criminal charges for bigamy. Either way, she's backed herself into a corner. And without an attorney, she's going to have a much harder time negotiating the final settlement terms. This is good for you, Marcus. Very good. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that the woman I'd built a life with was so eager to start a new one that she disregarded basic legal reality. Sad that our marriage was ending not with dignity but with her self-destructing in real time. I thanked Robert and ended the call. Then I sat at my desk and stared at nothing for a long time. The next week was chaos for Jennifer. I know because mutual friends started reaching out, fishing for information. Have you heard about Jennifer's wedding? Is it true the divorce isn't final yet? Did her lawyer really drop her? I kept my responses brief and noncommittal. I'm not discussing it, I'd say. Talk to Jennifer. But Jennifer wasn't talking. She'd gone silent on social media. Her sister stopped returning calls from mutual friends. The rumor mill churned without facts, spinning speculation into drama. Then, 8 days before her planned wedding, Jennifer called me. It was late, nearly 11 at night. I was in bed reading when my phone lit up with her name. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. I swiped to accept and waited. Marcus, her voice was small, stripped of the confidence I'd heard when she'd thrown the divorce papers at me months ago. I need to ask you something. I sat up. I'm listening. Will you agree to expedite the divorce? I can't cancel the wedding. Too many people have made plans. Too much money spent. If we can finalize everything in the next week, I can still go through with it legally. The audacity of the request stunned me into silence. She wanted me to help her marry another man faster. She wanted me to cooperate in erasing our 11 years together so she could start fresh without the inconvenient detail of still being my wife. I felt a laugh building in my chest, dark and bitter. Jennifer, I said slowly, you planned a wedding while we're still married. You didn't tell your attorney. You put me in a position where I had to be the one to point out that you were about to commit a felony. And now you want me to expedite our divorce so you don't have to postpone your party? Please, she said, and I heard tears in her voice. Real or performed, I couldn't tell anymore. I know I messed up. I know this looks bad. But I love him, Marcus. I want to marry him. I just need a little help to make the timing work. Can you please talk to your lawyer? The laugh finally escaped. It sounded hollow. No, I said. I'm not going to help you marry the man you cheated on me with. If you want to avoid embarrassment, postpone the wedding. If you want to commit bigamy, that's on you. But I'm not lifting a finger to make this easier for you. She was quiet for a moment. Then her voice hardened. You're being spiteful. This is who you really are, isn't it? Vindictive. Small. I shook my head even though she couldn't see me. I'm being honest, Jennifer. Something you stopped being a long time ago. She hung up without another word. I set the phone down and lay back against the pillows. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. I'd meant every word. The wedding was postponed. The announcement went out 5 days before the scheduled date. Jennifer and Derek sent a carefully worded message to their guests citing unforeseen legal complications and promising a new date once matters were resolved. The registry stayed active. The venue was rescheduled for December. Life, it seemed, would go on for them. Just a few months delayed. Our divorce finalized in late September, exactly on the timeline Robert had predicted. Jennifer found a new attorney, a solo practitioner willing to take her case, but by then the settlement terms were mostly locked in. She got her share of the investment accounts and walked away from the house. I kept my retirement funds intact and took on the mortgage solo. We divided the furniture and kitchen items with cold efficiency. She took the couch. I kept the bed. Neither of us wanted the dining table where we'd shared thousands of meals. We sold it online to a young couple who looked happy and hopeful. I wondered how long that would last for them. The day the divorce was finalized, I didn't feel relief or sadness or anything dramatic. I felt tired. Tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. Robert shook my hand in the courthouse hallway and told me I'd handled everything with remarkable composure. "You did the right thing," he said. "You protected yourself and maintained your dignity. That matters." I nodded and thanked him. Then I drove home to a house that was fully mine and completely empty. I spent the next few weeks in a strange limbo. The divorce was done, but I didn't feel free. I felt unmoored. I'd spent 11 years with Jennifer as my reference point, and now I had to relearn how to exist without her as the backdrop. Simple things became complicated. Grocery shopping without considering her preferences. Watching movies she would have hated without guilt. Sleeping without the sound of another person breathing beside me. Friends reached out, offering condolences that felt like sympathy for a death. "I'm sorry about you and Jennifer. If you need anything, let me know." Their kindness was genuine, but I didn't know what to do with it. What I needed was time. Time to figure out who Marcus was when he wasn't Jennifer's husband. Time to remember what I liked, what I wanted, what mattered to me outside the framework of a failed marriage. I started running again, something I'd given up years ago when Jennifer complained about the early morning alarm. I'd wake up at sunrise and hit the trail along Lady Bird Lake, letting my feet find a rhythm while my mind went blank. The physical exhaustion helped. So did the solitude. Out there, with the water on one side and the city waking up on the other, I could just be. No explanations. No justifications. Just breath and motion and the gradual understanding that I'd survive this. In November, 2 months after the divorce and 1 month before Jennifer's rescheduled wedding, I ran into Derek Stone. It wasn't planned. I was at a coffee shop near my office, waiting for my order, when I heard a familiar laugh. I turned and there he was. Tall, athletic build, dark hair with just enough gray to look distinguished. He was with a colleague, discussing some project, and he hadn't seen me. I could have walked out. I could have avoided the encounter entirely. Instead, I waited for my coffee and then approached his table. "Derek," I said. His head snapped up. His expression cycled through confusion, recognition, and then carefully controlled neutrality. "Marcus," he said. He didn't stand. Didn't offer his hand. Just acknowledged me with the minimum social grace required. I didn't sit down. I just looked at him, this man who'd been a ghost in my marriage, and said what I'd been carrying for months. "I don't hate you. I thought I would, but I don't. You didn't break anything that wasn't already broken. But I want you to know something. The invitation you both sent to my office? That was cruel. Not to me. To yourself. You almost started your life together with a felony. Think about that." Derek's face flushed. "I didn't know she sent that to you. I told her it was too soon, that we should wait." She insisted everything would be fine. I believed her. I nodded. Yeah. That's kind of her pattern. Good luck with that. I walked out before he could respond, my coffee warm in my hand, my shoulders lighter than they'd been in months. I hadn't confronted him for closure. I'd confronted him for clarity. And now I had it. Jennifer's problems were no longer mine to solve. Her decisions were no longer mine to manage. I was free of that weight. The feeling was strange and good and terrifying all at once. December came. Jennifer's wedding happened. I know because I saw photos online, posted by mutual friends who'd attended. She looked beautiful in a white dress that probably cost more than our honeymoon. Derek looked proud beside her. They were surrounded by flowers and smiling guests and all the trappings of a fresh start. I looked at those photos once, then closed the browser and went for a run. Their happiness or lack thereof was no longer my concern. I had my own life to rebuild. That's where I am now. Single. 42. Living in a house that's too big for one person but feels right anyway. I'm still figuring out what comes next. Dating feels impossible. Trusting someone new feels laughable. But I'm learning to be okay with where I am. I'm learning that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means integrating the pain into who you are and moving forward anyway. Some days are easier than others. Some days I miss what I thought we had. Most days I'm grateful for what I escaped. If you're in the middle of your own storm, if you're staring at evidence you don't want to believe or sitting in a lawyer's office trying to make sense of the wreckage, I see you. This story isn't a blueprint. It's just what happened to me. What happens to you will be different. But one thing I learned through all of this is that dignity matters. Revenge is tempting. Spite is easy. But walking away with your integrity intact, that's the win. That's what lets you sleep at night when everything else is uncertain. Jennifer made her choices. Derek made his. I made mine. And the only one I have to live with is my own. So I chose honesty over pretense. I chose self-respect over convenience. I chose to let her go instead of holding on to someone who'd already left. Those choices hurt. They still hurt some days. But they were mine, and I'd make them again. Because at the end of it all, the only person you have to face in the mirror is yourself. And I can face him now. That's enough. That has to be enough. The holidays came and went with a heaviness I hadn't anticipated. Thanksgiving was the first real test. My sister Rachel invited me to Dallas, but the thought of explaining my situation to relatives who still thought Jennifer and I were working things out felt exhausting. Instead, I volunteered at a community kitchen downtown, serving turkey and dressing to people whose problems made mine look manageable. There's something humbling about ladling gravy for someone who's grateful just to have a warm meal. It put things in perspective in a way therapy never could. Christmas was harder. The house felt cavernous without decorations. Jennifer had always been the one who insisted on the tree, the lights, the stockings hung over a fireplace we rarely used. I considered skipping it entirely, but my neighbor Ted knocked on my door 2 weeks before the holiday with a 6-pack and a proposition. His wife had left him 3 years ago, and he'd learned the hard way that pretending holidays don't exist just makes them worse. "We're putting up lights," he said. "Both our houses. Tomorrow." No arguments. Ted was retired military, the kind of guy who approached problems with tactical precision. We spent a Saturday afternoon stringing lights along rooflines and wrapping garland around porch columns. He didn't ask about Jennifer. He didn't offer platitudes. He just handed me light strands and told bad jokes about his time in Germany. When we finished, both houses glowed against the December dusk. It wasn't joyful, exactly, but it was defiant. A statement that we were still here, still participating in life even when life had kicked us sideways. The week between Christmas and New Year's is always strange, that liminal space where time feels suspended. I used it to purge the house of everything that reminded me of Jennifer. Not in anger, but in necessity. I couldn't keep living in a museum of a failed marriage. I started with the obvious things. Her books, her yoga mats, the throw pillows she'd insisted made the couch more inviting. I boxed everything methodically and dropped it at a donation center on the east side. Then I tackled the harder items. Photos from our honeymoon in Costa Rica. The quilt her grandmother had made us as a wedding gift. A collection of wine corks from every bottle we'd shared, saved in a glass jar like they meant something. I sat on the floor of the guest room with these artifacts spread around me and felt the weight of accumulated years. Each item was a choice. Keep or release. Remember or forget. Some things went into boxes. Others went into the trash. A few I kept, not out of sentimentality, but as reminders. Evidence that I'd been here, that it had been real, even if it hadn't lasted. The wine corks were the hardest. Jennifer had started that collection on our first anniversary. Every special occasion, every Friday night, every random Tuesday when we'd needed something to celebrate, she'd save the cork and add it to the jar. By the time she left, there were maybe 200 corks in there. 200 shared moments reduced to compressed tree bark. I held that jar for a long time, feeling its weight, remembering the ritual of her adding each one with a little ceremony. Then I unscrewed the lid and dumped them all in the trash. They made a sound like rain on a tin roof. When the jar was empty, I put it back in the cabinet. Empty, it was just a jar. I could live with that. New Year's Eve I spent alone, deliberately. Friends invited me to parties, to bars, to countdowns surrounded by people pretending this arbitrary calendar flip meant something profound. I declined them all. Instead, I made a steak, poured a good whiskey, and sat on my back porch watching the neighborhood. Fireworks started around 11, amateur displays that crackled and fizzed in backyard across the subdivision. At midnight, the noise peaked, a cacophony of celebration and hope and drunken optimism. I raised my glass to the sky and said nothing. No resolutions. No promises. Just acknowledgement that I'd survived the year and would likely survive the next. January brought clarity in the form of routine. I threw myself into work with an intensity that surprised my colleagues. I volunteered for projects others avoided, stayed late debugging code, took on system migrations that required weekend hours. My manager noticed. "Marcus, you're burning yourself out," she said during a one-on-one. "Take some time off. Go somewhere." I nodded and promised I would, knowing I wouldn't. Work gave me purpose when everything else felt purposeless. It gave me problems with solutions, unlike the problems I'd left at home. But the exhaustion caught up with me in February. I got sick, the kind of flu that leaves you shivering under blankets questioning your mortality. For 3 days I couldn't get out of bed. I canceled meetings, ignored emails, and surrendered to the fever. Ted checked on me, leaving soup and Gatorade on my porch with texts telling me to drink fluids and stop being stubborn. Rachel called from Dallas threatening to drive down if I didn't answer my phone regularly. Their concern felt foreign. I'd gotten used to handling things alone. When the fever broke, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and had the thought I'd been avoiding for months. I was lonely. Not just alone, but lonely. The kind of loneliness that sits in your chest and makes simple tasks feel monumental. I missed having someone to talk to about nothing. I missed shared routines and inside jokes and the comfort of another presence in the house. I didn't miss Jennifer specifically. I missed the idea of partnership. The concept of not carrying everything solo. That realization scared me more than the divorce had. Because it meant I was ready to try again eventually. Ready to risk being vulnerable with someone new. Ready to believe that not everyone would treat my trust like something disposable. But it also meant I had more healing to do before I got there. You can't build something new on a foundation that's still cracked. I needed to repair myself first. I started therapy in March. Not because I thought I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how I'd missed the signs. How I'd let things deteriorate so far before acting. My therapist was a woman named Dr. Patel, mid-50s with kind eyes and a direct communication style I appreciated. She didn't let me hide behind intellectualization or humor. When I'd try to analyze Jennifer's behavior or rationalize my choices, she'd redirect. We're not here to understand her, Marcus. We're here to understand you. What do you need to learn from this? The sessions were hard. Dr. Patel made me examine patterns I'd carried from childhood. My parents had divorced when I was 12, and I'd watched my father become bitter and isolated afterward. I'd promised myself I'd never become that kind of man. Turned out I'd overcorrected. I'd become the kind of man who avoided conflict at all costs, who prioritized peace over honesty, who let things slide until they couldn't be slid anymore. That pattern had served me in some ways. It made me easy to work with, reliable, steady. But it also made me easy to take advantage of. Easy to lie to. Easy to leave. Dr. Patel asked me what I wanted different in the future. I want to speak up earlier, I said. I want to trust my instincts instead of second-guessing them. I want to choose someone who values honesty as much as I do. She nodded. Those are good goals. But they require something from you first. What's that? I asked. You have to believe you're worth fighting for. Worth speaking up for. Worth choosing. Do you believe that? I sat with the question. The answer should have been immediate. Of course I believe that. But did I? Or had I spent so long being the accommodating one, the understanding one, the one who made things easy for everyone else, that I'd forgotten to make things good for myself? I don't know, I admitted. Dr. Patel smiled, not unkindly. That's honest. That's where we start. Over the following weeks, we worked on that question. What made me worth fighting for? What made me valuable beyond my utility to others? It felt selfish at first, almost narcissistic. But Dr. Patel reframed it. Self-worth isn't arrogance, she said. It's recognizing your inherent value as a person, separate from what you do or provide. You're not a function, Marcus. You're a human being with needs and wants and the right to express them. It sounds simple when you say it like that, I told her. She laughed. Simple doesn't mean easy. Spring brought changes, literal and metaphorical. I repainted the bedroom, replacing the sage green Jennifer had chosen with a deep charcoal that felt more like me. I replaced the mattress, unable to sleep on something we'd shared for years. I bought new sheets, higher thread count than I'd ever considered necessary, and discovered that small luxuries matter when you're rebuilding. I joined a gym, not the one Jennifer had gone to, but a powerlifting gym on the south side where people were more interested in their lifts than small talk. The physical exertion helped. So did the community of people working toward concrete goals. I made a friend there, a guy named Carlos who was a few years younger and going through his own relationship aftermath. We spotted each other, pushed each other, and occasionally grabbed coffee after workouts. Carlos had a different approach to his breakup than I did. He was angry, vocal about it, ready to catalog every wrong his ex had done. At first, his energy exhausted me. But I came to appreciate it. He expressed what I'd kept locked down. His anger gave mine permission to surface. Not the destructive kind, but the honest acknowledgement that I had a right to be upset about what happened. You're too calm about this, Carlos said one morning after we'd finished a brutal squat session. She cheated on you, tried to marry someone else while you were still married, and you're over here being philosophical about it. Aren't you pissed? I wiped sweat from my face and considered the question. I was pissed, I said. For a while. But staying angry just keeps you connected to the person who hurt you. I don't want to give her that much space in my head anymore. Carlos shook his head. Man, I don't know if that's healthy or if you're repressing. Maybe both, I admitted. We laughed, and it felt good. Normal. Like I was becoming someone who could laugh about the absurdity of life again. In April, I got an unexpected message on LinkedIn. It was from Patricia Vance, Jennifer's former attorney. I almost deleted it, assuming it was a mistake. But curiosity won. I opened it. Mr. Caldwell, I wanted to reach out personally to say I appreciate how you handled your case. The situation was unusual, and you conducted yourself with remarkable integrity. If you ever need legal assistance in the future, or if you know anyone who does, I'd be honored to help. I read it twice, trying to parse the subtext. It felt like an apology, or maybe an acknowledgement. Either way, it was unexpected kindness from someone who'd been on the other side of my divorce. I responded briefly. Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your professionalism throughout the process. That was it. But the exchange sat with me. People notice how you handle adversity. They notice whether you take the low road or the high road. I'd chosen the high road not because I was noble, but because I couldn't live with myself otherwise. Apparently, that choice had made an impression. It was a small validation, but it mattered. May marked 1 year since I'd filed for divorce. I didn't realize the date until it had passed. That felt significant. The anniversary that had once loomed so large had come and gone without ceremony. I was in a work meeting when the thought occurred to me later. A year ago today, I was meeting with Robert for the first time. A year ago, I was terrified and heartbroken and convinced I'd never feel normal again. Now I was sitting in a conference room discussing server architecture and feeling mostly okay. The contrast was stark. Healing, I realized, isn't a destination. It's the gradual accumulation of okay days until the bad ones are the exception instead of the rule. That weekend I did something I'd been avoiding. I went through my phone and deleted Jennifer's number. Not blocked, just deleted. Removed from my contacts so that if she ever reached out, I'd see an unknown number instead of her name. It felt like closing a door I'd left ajar. She had my number if she needed to reach me for something legal. But I didn't need hers anymore. We had no joint responsibilities left. No reason to stay connected. The deletion took 2 seconds. The decision to do it took months. Summer came hot and unforgiving, the kind of Texas heat that makes you question why anyone lives here. I spent weekends working in the yard, a task I'd always left to Jennifer. Turned out I didn't mind it. There was something meditative about mowing in straight lines, trimming hedges, pulling weeds. Physical labor with visible results. By July, the yard looked better than it ever had during our marriage. Ted commented on it. "You've got a green thumb I didn't know about," he said. "I don't know about that," I replied. "I just like finishing things I start." He gave me a look that suggested he understood I wasn't just talking about landscaping. I started dating in August, tentatively. A coworker set me up with her friend Lisa, a teacher who'd been divorced for 2 years and had similar cautious energy. We met for coffee, talked easily about safe topics, and agreed to try dinner the following week. Dinner went well enough that we planned a third date. On that third date, Lisa asked the question I'd been dreading. "What happened with your marriage?" I gave her the abbreviated version. She had an affair, planned a wedding before our divorce was final, her lawyer dropped her. It was messy. Lisa was quiet for a moment. "That's a lot," she said. "How are you with trust now?" It was a fair question, maybe the most important one she could have asked. "I'm working on it," I said honestly. "I'm not going to pretend I don't have walls up. But I'm not interested in punishing someone new for what someone old did. That wouldn't be fair to either of us." Lisa nodded. "I appreciate that. For what it's worth, my ex cheated too. It messes with your head in ways people who haven't experienced it don't understand." We commiserated, shared war stories, and by the end of the evening had established that we were both damaged but functional. It wasn't romantic exactly, but it was real. We dated for 6 weeks before mutually deciding we were better as friends. The attraction was mild, the chemistry adequate, but neither of us felt the spark necessary to build something lasting. The breakup was so amicable it barely qualified as one. We texted occasionally after, checking in, and I counted it as a success. I dated someone new without catastrophizing. I'd been vulnerable without being destroyed. Progress. September brought the second anniversary of my divorce being finalized. This time I marked it deliberately. I took the day off work and drove to Enchanted Rock, the massive pink granite dome a couple hours west of Austin. I'd been there once with Jennifer early in our relationship. We'd hiked to the summit holding hands and talking about the future with the certainty of people who thought they had it figured out. Returning alone felt like a pilgrimage of sorts. A way to reclaim a place that had been ours and make it mine. The hike was harder than I remembered. Steeper. More exposed. The sun beat down on the granite, radiating heat that made every step feel earned. By the time I reached the summit, I was drenched in sweat and breathing hard. But the view was worth it. Miles of Texas hill country spreading out in every direction, endless and indifferent and beautiful. I sat on the warm rock and let the wind cool me. Thought about the man who'd made this hike years ago with a woman he thought he'd grow old with. Thought about the man sitting here now, alone but not lonely, tired but not broken. They were the same person, but different. The intervening years had stripped away naivety and replaced it with something sturdier. Not cynicism. Realism. I stayed up there for an hour, watching hawks circle on thermals and hikers ascend the trail I'd just climbed. When I finally descended, my legs were shaking and my water bottle was empty. I felt good. Clean. Like I'd sweated out the last residue of bitterness. On the drive home, I stopped at a barbecue joint in Johnson City and ate brisket that fell apart on my fork. Treated myself to peach cobbler and sweet tea. Sat at a picnic table watching families and couples and solo diners like me. Life, in all its messy complicated glory, continuing regardless of individual pain. There was comfort in that. The world didn't stop because my marriage ended. It kept spinning, kept offering moments of goodness if you were willing to look for them. October brought an unexpected opportunity. My company was expanding operations into Phoenix and needed someone to lead the setup of a new data center. The position would require relocating for at least a year, possibly longer. My manager offered it to me with the caveat that I could decline without penalty. "You've been through a lot," she said. "I'd understand if you want to stay put. But I also think a change of scenery might be good for you." I told her I'd think about it. The truth was, I'd been thinking about leaving Austin for months. The city held too many memories. Every restaurant, every park, every street corner had some association with Jennifer. Moving would be a clean break, a chance to build a life somewhere that wasn't haunted by the past. I talked it through with Dr. Patel. She asked the questions I needed to hear. "Are you running from something or toward something?" "Both," I admitted. "I'm running from constant reminders of what didn't work. But I'm also running toward a fresh start. A place where I can be just Marcus, not Marcus the divorced guy or Marcus whose wife cheated or Marcus who everyone feels sorry for." Dr. Patel smiled. "Running toward something is healthy. Running from something can be too, as long as you're not trying to outrun yourself. You take your patterns with you wherever you go." "I know," I said. "But I also think environment matters. It's hard to become someone new when everyone around you expects you to stay the same." She nodded. "That's fair. If you go, go intentionally. Make it a choice, not an escape." I accepted the position in mid-October. Gave notice to my landlord, started packing up the house, and told friends I was leaving. The reactions were mixed. Rachel was worried I was isolating myself. Ted was supportive, said he understood the need for a reset. Carlos was envious, wished he had the flexibility to do the same. I spent my last few weeks in Austin saying slow goodbyes. Dinners with friends, final workouts at the gym, a last run around Lady Bird Lake at dawn. Each goodbye felt like shedding skin. Painful but necessary. The night before the movers came, I walked through the empty house one last time. My footsteps echoed on hardwood floors. The walls showed pale rectangles where furniture and photos had hung. It looked like a crime scene, all evidence removed, only the outline remaining. I stood in the bedroom where I'd confronted Jennifer about the divorce papers. Stood in the kitchen where I'd eaten meals alone and learned to cook for one. Stood in the living room where I'd watched my marriage dissolve in slow motion. Each room held ghosts, but they were fading. losing their power. I locked the door behind me and left the keys on the counter for the new owner. Drove to a hotel for my last night in Austin. Phoenix was hot and sprawling and nothing like Austin. That was the point. I rented a small apartment in Tempe, close to the office, with a view of a parking lot and mountains in the distance. It was aggressively beige and utterly impersonal. Perfect. I furnished it minimally. A bed, a couch, a table, basic kitchen supplies. Enough to live, not enough to feel permanent. I told myself it was temporary. But temporary felt right for where I was. I didn't need roots yet. I needed space to figure out what I wanted roots to look like. The work was consuming, which helped. Setting up a new data center required coordinating contractors, managing timelines, troubleshooting problems that emerged daily. I worked 12-hour days and fell into bed exhausted. Met colleagues who knew nothing about my history. To them, I was just Marcus, the guy leading the Phoenix project. Competent, friendly, a little quiet but reliable. It felt like putting on new clothes. I could be whoever I wanted here. No one was comparing me to who I used to be. I explored the city on weekends. Hiked Camelback Mountain. Wandered through the desert botanical garden. Drove out to Sedona and sat among the red rocks feeling small and okay with it. Arizona was stark in a way Texas wasn't. Unforgiving. Honest. The landscape didn't pretend to be gentle. It showed you exactly what it was and dared you to love it anyway. I found that approach refreshing. No hidden agendas. No pretense. Just heat and stone and sky. In November, almost 2 years after the divorce finalized, I got a notification on social media. Jennifer had posted for the first time in months. A photo of her and Derek, both dressed formally, at what looked like a gala or charity event. They were smiling, arms around each other, picture of happiness. The caption was something generic about grateful hearts and new adventures. I looked at the photo for maybe 10 seconds. Felt nothing. No anger, no jealousy, no lingering pain. Just mild curiosity about whether they were actually happy or just performing happiness for an audience. Then I scrolled past. That reaction, or lack of reaction, told me everything I needed to know. I was done. Truly done. She'd become a character in a story I used to live, not someone with power over my present. I met someone new in December. Her name was Olivia, a project manager for one of our contractors. We worked together for weeks before the relationship shifted from professional to personal. It happened gradually. Coffee meetings that ran long. Emails that included jokes unrelated to work. A moment of eye contact during a tedious conference call that made both of us smile. When the project wrapped before Christmas, she asked if I wanted to grab a drink to celebrate. Not as colleagues. As people. I said yes. Olivia was different from Jennifer in every way that mattered. Direct where Jennifer had been evasive. Straightforward where Jennifer had been manipulative. She told me on our second date that she'd been engaged once but called it off 6 months before the wedding. Realized I was marrying him because it was expected, not because it was right, she said. Walked away from the deposits, the invitations, all of it. Best decision I ever made. I appreciated her honesty. Appreciated that she understood what it meant to choose yourself over convenience. We dated slowly, deliberately. No rush to define anything or escalate. We'd both been burned by moving too fast in the past. Instead, we built friendship first. Learned each other's rhythms and communication styles. Discovered we both liked hiking in terrible action movies and cooking elaborate meals we'd inevitably mess up. She made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years. Not at jokes, but at life. At the absurdity of our shared disasters in the kitchen. At the way we both overthought simple decisions. At how serious we'd both been for so long that we'd forgotten how to be playful. By January, we were spending most weekends together. By February, she'd left a toothbrush at my place and I'd left running shoes at hers. Small integrations that felt significant. We talked about our pasts without dwelling in them. She knew about Jennifer and the wedding invitation. I knew about her called-off engagement and the family pressure that had nearly made her go through with it. We swapped stories like veterans comparing scars. Not to compete, but to understand. To recognize that we'd both survived things that could have broken us. One night in March, lying in bed after watching a movie, Olivia asked me something I'd been asking myself. Do you think you'll ever get married again? I was quiet for a moment. A year ago, I would have said no immediately. Emphatic and certain. But lying there with her head on my chest and her breathing slow and steady, the answer felt different. I don't know, I said honestly. I'm not opposed to it. But I'd need to be sure. Really sure. Not just hoping it works out, but knowing I'm with someone who values honesty as much as I do. Someone who won't run when things get hard. She was quiet. Then, do you think I could be that person? Eventually? The question was vulnerable, risky. I respected her for asking it. I think you could, I said. But we're not there yet. And that's okay. We don't have to rush. She nodded against my chest. I like that we don't have to rush. It was the most honest conversation I'd had about a future relationship since Jennifer. It felt good. Real. Built on mutual respect instead of assumptions. Spring in Phoenix was beautiful, the brief window before the brutal summer heat arrived. We hiked every weekend, chasing wildflowers blooming across the desert. Olivia introduced me to friends she'd made since moving to Arizona. I introduced her to colleagues who'd become friends during the project. We built a social life together, something that felt new and ours rather than inherited from past relationships. At a barbecue at someone's house in April, I watched Olivia laugh at something someone said and felt a warmth in my chest I recognized. Not the desperate, consuming feeling I'd mistaken for love with Jennifer. Something steadier. Calmer. Like coming home after a long trip. That night, walking back to the car, she took my hand. This is good, she said. We're good. I squeezed her hand. Yeah, I said. We are. It wasn't a declaration of forever. It was an acknowledgement of now. And now was enough. Maybe that was the lesson I'd needed to learn. Stop trying to guarantee the future. Stop looking for promises that can't be kept. Just be present with someone trustworthy and see where it leads. One honest day at a time. In May, my Phoenix assignment was extended another year. I'd expected it, even hoped for it. I called Rachel to tell her. She was happy for me but made me promise to visit Dallas soon. You sound different, she said. Lighter. I feel different, I admitted. Like I'm finally becoming who I was supposed to be before everything got complicated. She laughed. You mean before you got married? Maybe, I said. Or maybe I just needed to go through all of that to get here. Either way, I'm grateful for where I landed. We talked for an hour, catching up on family gossip and her kids' activities. Normal sibling conversation that felt precious because it was ordinary. I told Olivia about the extension that weekend over breakfast. She smiled. Good, she said. I wasn't ready for you to leave yet. I raised an eyebrow. Yet? She shrugged, playful. I'm keeping my options open. You're still on probation. I laughed. Fair enough. What do I need to do to pass probation? Keep being honest, she said. Keep showing up. Keep being you. That's it. I can do that, I said. She reached across the table and took my hand. I know you can. That's why I'm here. As summer approached and the heat became oppressive, we started planning a trip. Somewhere cool, Olivia insisted. I've had enough of the desert for a while. We settled on Seattle, a city neither of us had spent much time in. Booked a week in July. Planned a hike in the Cascades, explore the city, eat too much seafood, and generally be tourists without agenda. It felt like the kind of thing people do when they're building something. making memories deliberately instead of stumbling into them. The night before we left, I had a moment of reflection. Sat on my balcony watching the sun set over the mountains, beer in hand, and thought about the journey that had brought me here. From the invitation on my desk to this balcony in Arizona. From the devastation of discovering Jennifer's betrayal to the cautious optimism of planning a trip with someone new. It had been almost 3 years since I filed for divorce. 3 years of grief and growth and gradual rebuilding. I wasn't the same man who'd opened that cream envelope. I was someone who'd been broken and chosen to heal rather than harden. Someone who'd faced the worst kind of betrayal and decided it wouldn't define him. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. Wrote something I needed to remember. You can't control who hurts you. You can only control how you respond. Choose dignity. Choose honesty. Choose to become better rather than bitter. I read it back, saved it, and felt the truth of it settle. This was my story now. Not the story of what Jennifer did to me, but the story of what I did after. How I picked up the pieces and built something new. How I learned to trust again, slowly and carefully, with someone who'd earned it. How I discovered that endings aren't always tragedies. Sometimes they're necessary demolitions that make space for better construction. Olivia opened the sliding door and stepped out onto the balcony. You okay? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, I said. Just thinking. About what? About how grateful I am that I'm here instead of there. That I chose to heal instead of staying stuck. She sat down beside me. I'm grateful you made that choice too, she said quietly. Otherwise we wouldn't have met. I put my arm around her and we watched the last light fade from the sky. Somewhere in Texas, Jennifer was living whatever life she'd built with Derek. I hope they were happy. I hope they'd learned something from the damage their choices had caused. But mostly, I didn't think about them at all anymore. They were the past. This balcony, this woman beside me, this hard-won peace, this was the present. And the present was finally, genuinely good. Seattle was everything we needed it to be. Cool air, gray skies that felt comforting instead of depressing, and a pace that let us breathe. We hiked trails where moss covered everything and the quiet felt earned rather than uncomfortable. Olivia took photos constantly, capturing moments I would have let pass without documentation. A waterfall we stumbled upon. Me looking ridiculous in a rain poncho. Both of us laughing over coffee that was too expensive but tasted perfect anyway. On our 4th day there, we were walking through Pike Place Market when my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Marcus, this is Jennifer. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to reach out and apologize for everything that happened. I handled things terribly and I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I wish you all the best. The message sat on my screen like a test I hadn't studied for. Olivia noticed my expression shift. Everything okay? I showed her the text. She read it, handed the phone back, and waited. What are you going to do? I watched a street performer juggle flaming batons while tourists applauded. 3 years ago, this message would have torn me open. Would have demanded a response, an explanation, maybe even a confrontation. Now it just felt late. Unnecessary. I'm going to do nothing, I said. She already knows what she did. An apology doesn't change it. And I don't need her closure to have mine. Olivia nodded. You're sure? I'm sure, I said, and deleted the message. We kept walking. Found a vendor selling fresh flowers. Olivia bought a small bouquet of sunflowers because they made her happy. We ate clam chowder and bread bowls and watched ferries cross the Sound. The moment passed without wait. That's when I knew I was truly free. Jennifer's words no longer had the power to disrupt my day. She'd become irrelevant to my happiness. We flew back to Phoenix sunburned and content. Real life resumed with its demands and routines, but something had shifted. Olivia and I had traveled well together. That sounds simple, but anyone who's been in a relationship knows it's not. Travel exposes incompatibilities. Different sleep schedules, Different priorities, different tolerance for chaos. We'd navigated it all smoothly. Compromised without resentment. Laughed through the frustrations. It felt like passing a test neither of us had announced we were taking. In August, Olivia's lease was up. We'd been dancing around the conversation for weeks. She could renew. She could find a new place. Or she could move in with me. We were both terrified of moving too fast, of repeating old mistakes. But we were also tired of splitting time between two apartments. One night over dinner, I just asked, "What do you want to do about your lease?" She set down her fork. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to move in," I said. "But only if you want to. Not because it's convenient or cheaper. Because you want to build something with me." She was quiet for a moment. "I want to," she said. "But I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of messing this up. Of us getting comfortable and then realizing we made a mistake." I reached across the table. "I'm scared too," I admitted. "But I think being scared means we care enough to do this right. We can take it slow even while living together. No rushing toward milestones. Just being together and seeing what happens." She moved in over Labor Day weekend. We combined our belongings with surprising ease. Her books fit on my shelves. My kitchen absorbed her cooking equipment. We both owned too many throw pillows, so we donated half. It felt like collaboration instead of compromise. The first morning waking up in our shared space, I made coffee while she showered. Heard her singing off-key through the bathroom door. Felt something settle in my chest that I thought was broken beyond repair. This was partnership. Real, messy, imperfect partnership with someone who showed up honestly every day. Work brought new challenges that fall. The Phoenix data center was operational, but now came the maintenance phase. Less exciting, more tedious. I considered whether to request a transfer back to Austin or stay in Arizona. Olivia made it clear she'd support either decision. "I have flexibility," she said. "My job is remote most of the time anyway. We can go wherever makes sense for your career." But I noticed she said we. Not you. We. That single word carried more weight than any declaration of love. I decided to stay in Phoenix. Austin held too much history. I'd built a new life here, one that felt authentically mine. Robert Chen emailed in October, checking in. "Hadn't heard from you in a while. Wanted to make sure you're doing well." I appreciated his thoughtfulness. Wrote back that I was doing better than well. That I'd moved, met someone, was genuinely happy. He responded with a simple message that meant more than he probably knew. That's all I needed to hear. "You earned this, Marcus." Thanksgiving that year was different. Olivia and I flew to Dallas to spend it with Rachel and her family. My nephews were older now, full of energy and questions. "Uncle Marcus, do you have a girlfriend?" The youngest asked over pie. "I do," I said, and Olivia squeezed my hand under the table. "Are you going to marry her?" He pressed on with the bluntness only children possess. "Maybe someday," I said. "If she'll have me." Olivia smiled but didn't push. We'd talked about marriage in abstract terms. Both agreed we'd know when the timing was right. No rush. No pressure. Just honesty about what we wanted. December brought an unexpected encounter. I was in Austin for a work conference when I ran into Derek Stone at the hotel bar. He was there for a different event, recognized me immediately. His face went through the same cycle as before. Surprise, discomfort, resignation. "Marcus," he said. "Derek," I replied. We stood there awkwardly until he gestured to the empty seat beside him. "Can I buy you a drink?" I almost declined. But curiosity won. "Sure," I said. We sat in uncomfortable silence until our drinks arrived. Then Derek spoke. "I owe you an apology," he said. "For everything. For the affair, for the wedding invitation, for being part of something that hurt you. I've thought about reaching out for years but didn't know what to say. I sipped my whiskey. Why now? He sighed. Because Jennifer and I are getting divorced. And going through it made me understand what I helped put you through. The karma of it isn't lost on me. I felt nothing at that news. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just mild interest in how the story had continued without me. What happened? He shook his head. Same thing that happened with you, probably. She had an affair. I found out. Turns out the person who cheats with you will cheat on you. Who knew? His laugh was bitter. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Not sorry for him specifically, but sorry that anyone has to experience that particular betrayal. We talked for another 20 minutes. He asked about my life. I gave him the highlights. New city, new relationship, doing well. He seemed genuinely happy for me. That's good, he said. You deserve that. When we parted ways, he shook my hand. Thank you for not being an asshole about this, he said. I could have been. I shrugged. What would that accomplish? We're all just trying to figure it out. He nodded and walked away. I finished my drink and felt the final piece of the story click into place. Jennifer hadn't changed. I had. I flew back to Phoenix the next day and told Olivia about the encounter. She listened without judgment. How do you feel about it? Strange, I said. Like closing a book I'd already finished. She's not my problem anymore. Never really was after the divorce. But knowing she repeated the same pattern with someone else confirms I made the right choice in leaving. Olivia kissed my forehead. You made a lot of right choices, she said. Including choosing to heal instead of staying bitter. Christmas was quiet and perfect. Just the two of us, no obligations or expectations. We cooked an elaborate meal that turned out better than expected. Exchanged modest gifts that showed we'd been paying attention. She gave me a first edition of a book I'd mentioned loving as a kid. I gave her hiking boots she'd been eyeing for months. We watched old movies and fell asleep on the couch tangled together. Simple. Easy. Right. New Year's Eve we stayed home again. Made a tradition of it. No parties, no crowds, just us marking the turn of the calendar together. At midnight, we kissed and I felt grateful in a way I hadn't in years. Grateful for the pain that had led me here. Grateful for the courage to leave when leaving was hard. Grateful for the patience to heal before jumping into something new. Grateful for this woman who'd chosen me when I was still figuring out how to choose myself. Looking back now, the wedding invitation that arrived at my office feels like it happened to someone else. That version of Marcus was drowning and didn't know it. Didn't know that survival meant letting go of the thing pulling him under. I don't regret the marriage. It taught me what I needed to know. I don't hate Jennifer. She gave me the push I needed to rebuild my life better than before. And I don't fear the future anymore. Because I learned the most important lesson. You can't control who stays. You can only control who you become when they leave. Olivia is in the kitchen now, making coffee while I finish writing this. The sun is rising over the mountains, painting everything gold. In a few minutes, I'll close this laptop and join her. We'll plan our day, something mundane and beautiful. Maybe a hike. Maybe errands. Maybe nothing at all. Whatever it is, it'll be honest. It'll be chosen. And it'll be mine. That's all I ever wanted. Not perfection. Not guarantees. Just a life built on truth with someone brave enough to live it with me. I found that. After everything, I found that. And that's how you know you've healed. Not when the pain stops, but when the good finally outweighs it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.